In a distant future where galaxies were connected by advanced technology and interstellar travel was as common as driving a car, there existed an arena unlike any other. It was called the Combat Vault, a place known throughout the universe for hosting brutal tournaments that pitted the strongest warriors against each other. These fighters came from every corner of the galaxy. Some were towering beasts with claws sharp enough to cut through steel. Others were biomechanical hybrids with glowing circuits running beneath their skin, and some were even machines made, entirely of metal and wires. The Combat Vault was not just a test of strength, it was a test of survival. Among the competitors gathered on this particular day was Emily Carter, a young woman from Earth. She stood out in the crowd, though not because she was particularly impressive. In fact, most people didn't notice her at all. Emily was small and unassuming, with plain brown hair tied back into a simple ponytail, and eyes that seemed more thoughtful than fierce. She wore a standard combat suit like everyone else, but hers looked slightly too big for her frame, making her appear even smaller next to the hulking figures around her. No one could understand why Emily had been invited to the tournament. The Combat Vault was reserved for the best of the best, the fiercest warriors, the most skilled soldiers, and the deadliest hunters. Yet here she was, a human girl who looked like she might trip over her own feet if she moved too quickly. Some whispered that it must have been a mistake. Others laughed openly at the idea of her stepping into the ring. Even the event organizers exchanged confused glances when they saw her name on the list of participants. When asked why she was there, Emily gave a straightforward answer. "I'm here to fight," she said calmly, meeting the curious stares with steady eyes. Her response only made things worse. A group of aliens nearby burst into laughter, their voices echoing like thunder in the large chamber. One of them, a reptilian creature with jagged scales covering its body, sneered at her. "You? Fight? This isn't a playground for weaklings," it hissed, baring rows of razor-sharp teeth. Emily didn't flinch. She simply nodded and walked away, leaving the creature to chuckle with its companions. Ryan Drake, another human competitor, also noticed Emily. Unlike her, Ryan was tall and muscular, with broad shoulders and a confident swagger that demanded attention. He was well known among the fighters for his aggressive style and love of showing off. When he saw Emily standing quietly by herself, he approached her with a smirk. "You don't belong here, kid," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "This is a place for real warriors, not whatever you are." Emily looked up at him without saying a word. There was no fear in her expression, just a quiet determination that somehow unsettled Ryan. After a moment, he shrugged and turned away, muttering something about amateurs wasting everyone's time. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something odd about her. Most people would have crumbled under the weight of so much ridicule, yet Emily seemed unfazed. It was almost as if she expected it, or worse, didn't care. As the hours passed, the atmosphere in the Combat Vault grew tense. The competitors began warming up, stretching their limbs and testing their weapons. The air buzzed with anticipation, and the noise level rose as conversations turned into shouts and boasts. Everyone wanted to prove they were the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest. But Emily remained apart from it all. She sat cross-legged on the floor, closing her eyes and focusing on her breathing. To anyone watching, she might have looked like she was meditating, or maybe just trying to block out the chaos around her. A few curious onlookers stopped to watch her, wondering what she was doing. Was she practicing some kind of strange Earth ritual? Or was she simply stalling because she knew she wouldn't last long in the arena? No one could say for sure. Eventually, they lost interest and returned to their own preparations, leaving Emily alone once again. The truth was, Emily wasn't ignoring the noise because she was scared or unsure. She had spent years training for moments like this, though not in the way most people imagined. While others focused on building muscle or learning flashy combat moves, Emily had dedicated herself to studying strategy. She read books about anatomy, psychology, and physics, analyzing how different bodies moved and reacted under pressure. She practiced identifying patterns in behavior, looking for subtle signs that revealed weakness or hesitation. And above all, she learned to stay calm no matter how chaotic things became. To Emily, fighting wasn't about brute force or showmanship. It was about understanding your opponent better than they understood themselves. Every movement, every breath, every flicker of emotion could tell you something important, if you knew how to look for it. That was the secret behind her confidence, though no one else realized it yet. Finally, the moment arrived. The tournament officials called all the competitors to attention, announcing the start of the first round. Names were drawn randomly, pairing fighters together for their initial matches. As the pairings were revealed, the crowd roared with excitement, cheering for their favorites. When Emily's name was called, barely anyone reacted. She was matched against a quadrupedal alien with sleek fur and claws that gleamed like polished silver. The creature snarled as it stepped into the arena, its muscles rippling beneath its skin. It was fast, agile, and clearly eager to make an example of the puny human. The spectators leaned forward in their seats, expecting a quick and bloody end to the match. Some even placed bets on how long Emily would last. Most guessed less than 30 seconds. But Emily didn't seem worried. She walked into the ring with steady steps, her gaze fixed firmly on her opponent. For a brief moment, the two of them stood motionless, sizing each other up. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, the alien lunged forward, aiming straight for Emily's throat. What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of panicking or trying to run, Emily sidestepped gracefully, avoiding the attack with ease. The alien skidded to a halt, spinning around to face her again. This time, it charged even faster, its claws slicing through the air. Again, Emily dodged, moving with fluid precision that seemed almost effortless. The crowd fell silent, unsure of what they were seeing. How was this tiny human keeping up with such a dangerous predator? The alien grew frustrated, its movements becoming wilder and less controlled. Sensing an opportunity, Emily waited patiently until the perfect moment arrived. As the creature leapt toward her once more, she planted her feet firmly on the ground and delivered a powerful kick to its exposed underside. The blow landed with surprising force, sending the alien crashing to the floor. It let out a pained yelp before going still, completely incapacitated. For a moment, no one spoke. The entire arena was frozen in shock. Then slowly murmurs began to spread through the crowd. Had that really just happened? Was this unassuming human girl actually capable of holding her own in the combat vault? Even Ryan, who had dismissed her earlier, found himself staring at her with newfound curiosity. Perhaps there was more to Emily Carter than anyone had realized. But, despite the growing whispers, Emily didn't celebrate her victory. She simply stepped back, waiting for the officials to confirm the result. Once they did, she nodded politely and returned to her corner, already preparing for whatever came next. If she felt proud of herself, she didn't show it. To her, this was only the beginning. The first round of the combat vault tournament was over, but the arena buzzed with energy. The crowd couldn't stop talking about what they had just witnessed. Emily Carter, the quiet human girl who everyone had dismissed, had defeated a deadly, quadrupedal alien in front of their very eyes. While some still doubted her abilities, others began to wonder if she might be more than just a fluke. But Emily herself remained calm, sitting quietly on a bench as the next matches unfolded. The second round started soon after, and the stakes were higher. Fighters who had survived the first round were now paired against tougher opponents. Ryan Drake, the arrogant human soldier, stepped into the ring for his match. His opponent was a towering insectoid creature with 6 spindly legs and razor-sharp pincers that clicked menacingly. The crowd cheered loudly for Ryan, expecting him to dominate. And he didn't disappoint, at least at first. Ryan charged forward with raw power, swinging his plasma blade in wide arcs. The insectoid tried to dodge, but Ryan's sheer force overwhelmed it. Sparks flew as his blade sliced through one of its legs, causing the creature to stumble. With a triumphant roar, Ryan pressed his advantage, landing blow after blow until the insectoid collapsed, defeated. The audience erupted into applause, chanting Ryan's name as he raised his fists in victory. Next up was Zarnak, the reptilian warrior covered in jagged scales. His opponent was a cyborg with mechanical limbs and glowing red eyes. The battle between them was brutal and chaotic, with both fighters exchanging heavy blows. Zarnak relied on his strength and speed, smashing his claws into the cyborg's metallic frame. The cyborg countered with precise strikes targeting Zarnak's weak spots. For several minutes, neither side gave an inch. But eventually, Zarnak's ferocity won out. With a final, devastating punch, he shattered the cyborg's core, sending sparks flying as it fell to the ground. As the winners of the second round were announced, Emily's name came up again. Her next opponent was another alien, a hulking brute with 4 arms and skin like hardened stone. The creature stomped into the arena, growling loudly as it cracked its knuckles. It looked down at Emily with disdain, clearly unimpressed by her size. The crowd jeered, certain that this would be the end of her unlikely streak. Even Ryan smirked from the sidelines, muttering under his breath about how she wouldn't last 10 seconds. But Emily didn't react. She stood calmly in the center of the ring, waiting for the fight to begin. When the signal sounded, the stone-skinned alien lunged at her with incredible speed, its 4 massive fists swinging wildly. To the audience, it seemed impossible for Emily to avoid such an onslaught. Yet somehow she did. She twisted and ducked, moving with a grace that defied logic. Each time the alien swung, she slipped out of reach, staying just far enough away to stay safe. The alien grew angrier with every missed strike, its movements becoming less controlled. Sensing this shift, Emily acted. As the creature swung all 4 arms downward in a desperate attempt to crush her, she darted forward, sliding beneath its guard. In one fluid motion, she drove her elbow into its exposed ribcage. A loud crack echoed through the arena as the alien staggered back, clutching its side. Before it could recover, Emily delivered a series of quick jabs to its face, stunning it long enough for her to land a final kick to its chest. The alien stumbled backward, then crashed to the ground, unable to get up. Once again, the crowd fell silent. This wasn't supposed to happen. Emily had faced 2 dangerous opponents and defeated them both without breaking a sweat. Even Zarnak, who rarely showed any emotion, tilted his head slightly as he watched her walk away from the fallen alien. Something about her fighting style intrigued him. It wasn't flashy or aggressive like most warriors. Instead, it was efficient, almost surgical. She didn't waste energy throwing wild punches or making unnecessary moves. Every action she took served a purpose. After the match, reporters swarmed around Emily, shoving microphones in her face and firing questions at her. "How are you winning?" one asked. "What's your secret?" demanded another. Emily answered simply, "I study my opponents. I find their weaknesses and use them." Her response left many puzzled. Study? Weaknesses? Those weren't words usually associated with combat. Most fighters relied on strength, speed, or advanced technology. But Emily's approach was different, and it was working. As the third round approached, the remaining competitors began to take notice. Ryan, who had initially dismissed Emily as a joke, now watched her closely during breaks. He noticed how she observed the other fighters, analyzing their techniques and noting their habits. She didn't join in the boasting or trash talk like the others. Instead, she stayed quiet, conserving her energy. It was as if she already knew exactly what she needed to do, and nothing anyone said or did could throw her off balance. Zarnak also paid attention, though he kept his thoughts to himself. Unlike Ryan, who was driven by ego, Zarnak respected skill no matter where it came from. He had seen countless warriors rise and fall in the combat vault, and something told him Emily wasn't going to be one of the fallen. Still, he reminded himself not to underestimate her. Just because she was small didn't mean she was harmless. Meanwhile, Emily prepared for her next match. She reviewed footage of her previous fights, looking for ways to improve. She examined her opponent's movements, searching for patterns or tells that might give her an edge. To her, every fight was like solving a puzzle. The key was to understand the pieces and figure out how they fit together. Strength and aggression were just tools that could be countered with strategy and precision. Her third-round opponent was a biomechanical hybrid, with glowing circuits running beneath its translucent skin. The creature moved with eerie smoothness, its limbs extending and retracting like pistons. Its eyes glowed brighter as it scanned Emily, calculating her every move. This time the crowd was quieter, their jeers replaced by tense anticipation. They wanted to see if Emily could handle a foe that was faster and more unpredictable than anything she'd faced before. When the fight began, the biomechanical hybrid wasted no time. It launched itself at Emily with blinding speed, its limbs striking from multiple angles. But Emily was ready. She sidestepped each attack, keeping her focus sharp. The hybrid adjusted its tactics, slowing down slightly to try and trap her in a corner. Emily saw the change immediately and used it to her advantage. As the hybrid lunged forward, she grabbed one of its retractable arms and twisted it sharply. There was a sharp hiss as the limb locked in place, leaving the creature momentarily vulnerable. Without hesitation, Emily struck, targeting the glowing circuits on its torso. She delivered a series of precise blows, disabling key systems and causing the hybrid to falter. Within moments, it collapsed, its lights dimming as it powered down. The crowd gasped in disbelief. 3 fights, 3 victories, and Emily hadn't even broken a sweat. By the time the semifinals arrived, Emily's presence in the tournament was undeniable. The other competitors, including Ryan and Zarnak, acknowledged her as a serious threat. The initial mockery had faded, replaced by a mixture of respect and caution. Even the commentators struggled to explain her success. "She's not the strongest," one said, "and she's certainly not the fastest, but somehow she keeps finding ways to win." For Emily, none of this mattered. She didn't care about fame or recognition. All she cared about was surviving and proving to herself that she belonged in the combat vault. As she waited for the semi-final match to begin, she closed her eyes and focused on her breathing. She knew the challenges ahead would be greater than anything she'd faced so far. But she also knew something else. She was ready. The semi-finals would pit the top 4 fighters against each other, with only 2 advancing to the final showdown. Emily's opponent was Ryan Drake. The cocky soldier had bulldozed his way through the earlier rounds, relying on sheer power to overwhelm his enemies. Now he stood across from Emily, sneering confidently. "Guess you're not as useless as I thought," he admitted, grudging says. "But let's see how you handle me." Emily didn't respond. She simply nodded, her expression unreadable. As the signal sounded, Ryan charged forward, swinging his fists with relentless force. But Emily was ready. She danced around his attacks, staying just out of reach. Frustrated, Ryan pushed harder, his swings growing wilder. And that's when Emily struck. With a perfectly timed dodge, she slipped inside his guard and delivered a sharp elbow to his ribs. Ryan grunted in pain, stumbling backward. Before he could recover, Emily followed up with a swift kick to his knee, sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd erupted into cheers, stunned by the sudden turn of events. Ryan, humiliated, stared up at Emily in disbelief. "How?" he stammered. Emily offered him a hand to help him up, but Ryan slapped it away, scowling as he limped off the arena floor. Zarnak, watching from the sidelines, nodded approvingly. He had seen the same thing everyone else had. Emily wasn't just lucky, she was good. Very good. With Ryan eliminated, only Zarnak and Emily remained. The final round loomed ahead, promising. An epic clash between 2 vastly different fighters. One was a fierce predator driven by instinct and rage. The other was a quiet strategist guided by intellect and precision. Whoever emerged victorious would face the ultimate challenge. The apex predator known as Kragoth, and Emily knew that defeating Zarnak would only be the beginning. The semifinals of the Combat Vault tournament had come to an end, and the arena was buzzing with anticipation. Emily Carter and Zarnak, the reptilian, warrior were the last 2 standing. They had both proven themselves against formidable opponents, but now they would face each other in a battle that would determine who would advance to the final showdown. The crowd was divided. Some cheered for Zarnak's raw power, while others whispered about Emily's unexpected brilliance. No one could predict what would happen next. As the 2 fighters stepped into the ring, the atmosphere grew tense. Zarnak stood tall, his jagged scales glinting under the bright lights. His golden eyes narrowed as he studied Emily, trying to gauge her strategy. He had seen her fight before, and while he respected her skill, he believed her victories were due to pluck or weaker opponents. To him, this match would be different. He intended to crush her with sheer force, leaving no room for her clever tactics. Emily, on the other hand, remained calm. She didn't waste time sizing up Zarnak. She already knew everything she needed. Toser. During the earlier rounds, she had watched him carefully, noting how he relied on aggression and brute strength. His movements were fast but predictable, and his attacks often left him exposed. Emily's plan was simple. Stay patient, avoid his initial fury, and wait for the right moment to strike. The signal sounded, and the fight began. Zarnak charged, forward immediately, his claws slashing through the air like blades. The crowd roared as he unleashed a flurry of strikes, each one powerful enough to split stone. But Emily was ready. She moved with precision, dodging each attack and keeping just out of reach. Her movements were smooth and controlled, almost like a dance. Every time Zarnak swung, she slipped away, frustrating him more and more. Zarnak growled in anger, his tail whipping around as he tried to catch her off guard. He lunged again, aiming for her legs, but Emily jumped backward, landing lightly on her feet. The crowd held its breath, unsure of what to expect. Zarnak's frustration was growing, and Emily could see it in his eyes. His attacks became wilder, less calculated. This was exactly what she had been waiting for. Seizing the opportunity, Emily darted forward, closing the distance between them. Before Zarnak could react, she delivered a sharp kick to his knee, causing him to stumble. As he struggled to regain his balance, Emily struck again, targeting the soft spot beneath his jaw. The blow landed with surprising force, sending Zarnak reeling. He let out a low hiss, clutching his throat as he glared at her. But Zarnak wasn't done yet. With a roar, he launched himself at Emily once more, determined to finish the fight. His claws grazed her arm, drawing a thin line of blood. The crowd gasped, expecting Emily to falter. Instead, she used the momentum of his attack against him. As Zarnak overextended, she twisted sideways and drove her elbow into his side. There was a loud crack, and Zarnak staggered, clutching his ribs. Realizing he was losing control, Zarnak changed tactics. He slowed down, circling Emily cautiously. His golden eyes burned with intensity as he searched for an opening. Emily mirrored his movements, staying calm and focused. She knew Zarnak was dangerous, even when injured. One wrong move could cost her the match, and possibly her life. After several tense moments, Zarnak made his move. He feinted to the left, then swung his tail in a wide arc. Emily saw it coming and ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air above her head. Using the split second of hesitation, she sprang forward, driving her fist into Zarnak's chest. The impact sent him stumbling backward, and before he could recover, Emily followed up with a spinning kick to his temple. Zarnak collapsed to the ground, unconscious. The arena erupted into cheers as the officials declared Emily the winner. Even those who had doubted her couldn't deny her skill. Zarnak, though defeated, rose slowly to his feet and gave Emily a respectful nod. It was a rare gesture from someone like him, and it spoke volumes about the respect he now had for her. Emily returned the nod, acknowledging his strength and determination. With the semifinals over, only one challenge remained: the apex predator known as Kragoth. The very mention of its name sent shivers through the crowd. Kragoth was not just another fighter, it was a living weapon, engineered specifically for combat. Standing nearly 10 feet tall, it had muscular limbs covered in thick armored skin. Its claws were long and razor-sharp, capable of tearing through steel. Acidic saliva dripped from its fangs, burning holes in the ground where it landed. Its glowing red eyes scanned the arena, searching for prey. Kragoth had never been defeated in the combat vault. Every fighter who faced it ended up either dead or incapacitated within minutes. The crowd eagerly awaited the final showdown, eager to see if Emily could pull off another miracle, or if she would finally meet her match. When the gates opened and Kragoth emerged, the entire arena fell silent. The massive creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the walls with its sheer presence. Even the bravest warriors in the crowd felt a chill run down their spines. Emily, however, showed no fear. She stepped forward, meeting Kragoth's gaze without flinching. The two of them stood motionless for a moment, sizing each other up. Unlike her previous fights, Emily knew this battle would require everything she had. Kragoth was faster, stronger, and more dangerous than anything she had faced before. But she also knew that every creature, no matter how powerful, had weaknesses. Her job was to find them and exploit them. The signal sounded, and the fight began. Kragoth charged forward with terrifying speed, its claws slicing through the air. Emily rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly strike. She scrambled to her feet, moving quickly to put distance between herself and the predator. Kragoth pursued her relentlessly, smashing through pillars and obstacles as if they were made of paper. The crowd watched in awe as Emily weaved between Kragoth's attacks, her movements almost too fast to follow. She didn't try to fight back immediately. Instead, she focused on staying alive. Each time Kragoth lunged, she dodged, using the environment to her advantage. She leapt onto broken pieces of debris, climbed over fallen structures, and used shadows to mask her position. Kragoth's frustration grew with every missed attack. It roared in anger, smashing its fists into the ground and sending shockwaves rippling through the arena. Emily used these moments to study its behavior, looking for patterns or openings. She noticed that Kragoth's attacks, while powerful, left it momentarily unbalanced after each swing. If she timed her counterattack perfectly, she might have a chance. Finally, Emily saw her opportunity. As Kragoth raised one of its massive arms to strike, she sprinted forward, sliding beneath its guard. In one fluid motion, she pulled a small device from her belt, a compact electromagnetic pulse generator, and pressed it against Kragoth's armored hide. The device activated instantly, emitting a high-frequency pulse that disrupted the neural implants controlling Kragoth's enhanced reflexes. For a brief moment, Kragoth froze, stunned by the sudden interference. Emily didn't hesitate. She delivered a precise blow to the base of its neck, severing a critical nerve cluster. Kragoth let out a guttural roar, its massive body swaying unsteadily before crashing to the ground with a thunderous impact. The arena fell silent, the crowd unable to comprehend what had just happened. It took several seconds for the reality to sink in. Emily Carter, the quiet human girl who had been ignored and mocked, had defeated the unstoppable Kragoth. Cheers erupted from the stands, louder than ever before. People chanted her name, waving banners and throwing confetti into the air. Even the event organizers, who had initially questioned her inclusion, looked on in amazement. Ryan Drake, sitting in the audience, shook his head in disbelief. "I underestimated her," he muttered to himself. Zarnak, still recovering from his earlier defeat, watched silently, his expression unreadable. For the first time, humanity was being recognized not as weak or insignificant, but as cunning and resourceful. As the officials announced Emily as the champion, she stood quietly in the center of the arena, breathing deeply. She hadn't fought for fame or glory. She had fought to prove to herself that she belonged. And now, as the crowd celebrated her victory, she realized something important. She had earned their respect. Not because of her size or strength, but because of her intelligence, determination, and heart. The final showdown between Emily Carter and Kragoth had ended in a way no one could have predicted. The apex predator, feared across the galaxy for its unmatched power and ferocity, lay defeated on the ground, its massive body motionless. Emily stood nearby, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. Her combat suit was torn in places and a few drops of blood trickled from a scratch on her arm, but she was otherwise unharmed. The crowd, which had been silent just moments ago, now erupted into cheers so loud they seemed to shake the very walls of the combat vault. At first, Emily didn't move. She simply stared at Kragoth, making sure it wouldn't rise again. When she was certain the creature was incapacitated, she stepped back and raised her hand slightly, signaling that the fight was over. The gesture wasn't meant to boast or celebrate. It was practical, a way to show the officials and the audience that she had won without causing unnecessary harm. Even in victory, Emily remained calm and composed, a stark contrast to the chaos around her. The tournament organizers quickly rushed into the arena, their faces a mix of shock and admiration. They examined Kragoth carefully, ensuring it posed no further threat before declaring Emily the official winner. One of them approached her with a microphone, asking for a few words. "How did you do it?" he asked, his voice trembling with excitement. "No one has ever defeated Kragoth before." Emily hesitated for a moment, then spoke clearly. "I studied it," she said. "I watched how it moved, how it attacked, and I found its weak points. Strength isn't always about size or speed. Sometimes it's about knowing your enemy better than they know themselves." Her words were simple, yet they carried weight. The crowd listened intently, many nodding in agreement. For the first time, people began to understand what made Emily different. Not brute force, but strategy and focus. As the officials led her away from the arena, reporters swarmed around her, eager to learn more about the human girl who had accomplished the impossible. They fired questions at her from all sides. "Where did you learn to fight like that? Will you compete in future tournaments? What's your secret?" Emily answered patiently, repeating the same message she had given earlier. "I trained hard and paid attention to details," she said. "That's all there is to it." Despite the overwhelming attention, Emily didn't let it get to her head. She accepted the praise graciously but remained humble, refusing to make grand statements or promises. When someone offered her a lucrative sponsorship deal, she politely declined, saying she wasn't interested in fame or money. Her goal had never been to become rich or famous. It had been to prove herself both to others and to herself. And now that she had done that, she felt no need to chase anything else. Backstage, Ryan Drake watched Emily from a distance. He had seen the entire fight unfold, and though he hated to admit it, he was impressed. At first, he had thought Emily's victories were flukes, lucky breaks against weaker opponents. But after watching her take down Zarnak and then Kragoth, he realized she was something special. Her fighting style was unlike anything he had ever encountered, calm, calculated, and efficient. It was almost poetic in its simplicity. Ryan decided to approach her. As the reporters finally began to disperse, he walked up to Emily and cleared his throat. "Hey," he said awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I want to say sorry. I didn't think you had it in you, but you proved me wrong. Big time." Emily looked at him, surprised by the apology. After a moment, she smiled, faintly. "It's okay," she said. "You weren't the only one who doubted me." Ryan nodded, still looking uncomfortable. "Yeah, well, you earned my respect out there. What you did? That was incredible. I've never seen anyone fight like that before." "Thanks," Emily replied. She didn't elaborate, leaving Ryan unsure of what else to say. After an awkward pause, he muttered something about needing to check on his gear and walked away, shaking his head in disbelief. For the first time in his life, Ryan Drake felt genuinely humbled, and it was because of a quiet human girl who had refused to give up. Zarnak, the reptilian warrior, also sought out Emily after the match. Unlike Ryan, he didn't apologize or offer compliments. Instead, he came straight to the point. "You are skilled," he said, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Few fighters have bested me in battle. Fewer still could defeat. Kragoth, you have earned my respect." Emily met his golden eyes steadily. "Thank you," she said, "and I respect you too. You fought honorably." Zarnak tilted his head slightly as if considering her words. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot to Emily. Respect from someone like Zarnak was rare, and she knew it wasn't given lightly. As the hours passed, news of Emily's victory spread far beyond the combat vault. Reporters broadcast her story across the galaxy, calling her the human girl who defeated Kragoth in a day. 9 seconds. The phrase stuck, becoming a rallying cry for those who admired her determination and skill. People from all corners of the universe began talking about her, sharing videos of her fights, and debating how she had managed to pull off such an incredible feat. Some praised her intelligence and precision, Others marveled at her courage and calmness under pressure, but not everyone was happy about Emily's success. A few competitors grumbled about how unfair it was that a human had won. They argued that humans were weak and inferior compared to other species, and that Emily's victory was nothing more than a fluke. These complaints, however, were drowned out by the overwhelming support she received from the majority of the audience. Most people recognized that Emily's win wasn't about being human. It was about being smart, disciplined, and fearless. By the time Emily returned to Earth, she had become a legend. Crowds gathered at spaceports to welcome her home, holding signs and chanting her name. Politicians invited her to speak at conferences. Scientists begged her to share her training methods, and schools named gymnasiums after her. Yet despite all the attention, Emily stayed true to herself. She declined most invitations, choosing instead to live a quiet life away from the spotlight. Still, she didn't turn her back on the lessons she had learned in the combat vault. Knowing how much her experience could benefit others, Emily began teaching self-defense classes at a local community center. She focused on strategy and awareness, teaching students how to analyze their surroundings and use their opponent's weaknesses against them. Her classes quickly gained popularity, attracting people of all ages and backgrounds. One day, during a session with a group of teenagers, one of the students asked her why she had entered the combat vault in the first place. Emily paused, thinking carefully before answering. "I wanted to prove something to myself," she said. "Not just that I was strong enough to survive, but that I could think clearly and act decisively when it mattered most. Winning wasn't the goal. Learning was." Her answer resonated deeply with her students, inspiring them to push themselves harder and strive for excellence. Over time, Emily's teachings spread beyond the community center, reaching schools, military academies, and even interstellar organizations. Her methods became known as Carter's Principles, a set of guidelines emphasizing adaptability, observation, and mental toughness. Years later, tales of Emily Carter's victory continued to circulate throughout the galaxy. Parents told their children stories about the brave human girl who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Teachers used her example to encourage students to persevere, no matter how daunting the challenge. Soldiers studied her techniques, applying her strategies to real-world combat scenarios. Even alien species, once dismissive of humanity, began to see humans in a new light, as clever, resourceful, and resilient. Though Emily never sought fame or recognition, her legacy endured. She had proven that strength wasn't always about physical power. It was about heart, determination, and the willingness to think differently. And in doing so, she had inspired countless others to believe in themselves and their own potential. For Emily, the greatest reward wasn't the trophies or accolades. It was knowing that she had made a difference. Whether through her classes, her teachings, or simply her example, she had shown the galaxy that even the smallest among us can achieve greatness if we're willing to work hard and stay true to ourselves. And that, more than anything, was worth celebrating. Emily Carter's life after the Combat Vault tournament was far from ordinary, but she did her best to keep it simple. She returned to Earth and settled back into her small apartment in a quiet town. The world around her had changed, though. Everywhere she went, people recognized her face. Strangers stopped her on the street to thank her or ask for advice. News outlets constantly requested interviews and fan mail piled up at her doorstep. Despite the chaos, Emily handled it all with the same calm demeanor that had carried her through the arena. She knew fame wasn't something she could avoid entirely, so she found ways to channel it into something meaningful. Her self-defense classes became her primary focus. At first, they were just small gatherings of locals who wanted to learn basic fighting skills. But as word spread about the human girl who defeated Kragoth, enrollment skyrocketed. Soon, students traveled from neighboring cities, and even other planets, to train under her. Emily welcomed everyone, regardless of their background or experience level. Her teaching style was unique. Instead of emphasizing brute strength or flashy moves, she taught her students how to think critically during a fight. "Strength isn't always about muscles," she often said. It's about knowing when to act and when to wait. It's about understanding your opponent better than they understand themselves. She encouraged her students to study patterns, anticipate movements, and exploit weaknesses. Many of them struggled at first, unused to thinking so deeply about combat. But over time, they began to see the value in her approach. One of Emily's most dedicated students was a young man named Alex. He was shy and unconfident, often doubting his abilities. During practice sessions, he hesitated too much, afraid of making mistakes. One day, after another frustrating round of sparring, Alex approached Emily. "I don't think I'm cut out for this," he admitted, his voice filled with frustration. "Everyone else seems to get it except me." Emily smiled gently. "You're doing fine," she said, "but you're focusing on the wrong things. It's not about being perfect. It's about learning. Every mistake teaches you something. Pay attention to what happens when you fail. That's where the real growth comes from." Alex nodded slowly, taking her words to heart. Over the next few weeks, he began to change. He stopped worrying about looking foolish and started paying closer attention to his opponent's habits. By the end of the course, he had improved dramatically, not because he was stronger or faster, but because he had learned to adapt. When he thanked Emily for her guidance, she simply replied, "You did the work. I just showed you where to look." As her reputation grew, Emily received invitations to speak at events across the galaxy. Universities asked her to give lectures on strategy and psychology. Military organizations sought her expertise in training soldiers for high-stakes missions. Even corporations hired her to teach employees how to handle stressful situations. Emily accepted some of these offers, seeing them as opportunities to share her knowledge with a wider audience. But she always made sure to balance her schedule carefully, ensuring she had time for herself and her community. Despite her growing influence, Emily remained humble. She didn't own expensive clothes or flashy gadgets. Her diet consisted mostly of simple meals, and she spent her free time reading books or practicing meditation. To her, material possessions meant little compared to the satisfaction of helping others succeed. This attitude earned her even more admiration, both from humans and aliens alike. As years passed, Emily's story inspired countless individuals to pursue their dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. A young alien girl named Tira, whose species was often dismissed as weak, decided to join a prestigious intergalactic academy after hearing about Emily's victory. She faced ridicule and prejudice, but refused to give up. Drawing inspiration from Emily's methods, Tira focused on studying her opponent's weaknesses and exploiting them. By the time she graduated, she had become one of the top cadets in her class. Similarly, an aging soldier named Marcus rediscovered his passion for combat thanks to Emily's teachings. After decades of relying solely on brute force, he realized he had grown predictable and slow. Determined to improve, he enrolled in one of Emily's advanced workshops. There, he learned how to use strategy and observation to compensate for his declining physical abilities. Within months, he was leading his unit with renewed confidence, earning praise from colleagues who had once doubted him. Even those outside the realm of combat found value in Emily's principles. Business leaders adopted her ideas about analyzing patterns and anticipating challenges. Artists used her lessons on patience and persistence to overcome creative blocks. Teachers incorporated her emphasis on observation and adaptability into their classrooms. In every corner of society, people began applying Carter's principles to solve problems and achieve success. Of course, not everyone agreed with Emily's philosophy. Some critics argued that her methods were too passive, claiming that true strength came from aggression and dominance. Others accused her of oversimplifying complex issues, insisting that real-world scenarios couldn't always be solved with logic and strategy. But Emily didn't let these criticisms bother her. She understood that not everyone would agree with her approach, and that was okay. What mattered most was that her teachings resonated with those who needed them. One day, while preparing for a lecture at a major university, Emily received a surprising message. It was from Zarnak, the reptilian warrior she had defeated in the semifinals of the Combat Vault tournament. Though they hadn't spoken since that day, Zarnak had kept tabs on her accomplishments. His message was brief but heartfelt. Your wisdom has reached my people. They now see humans differently because of you. Thank you. Emily read the message several times, touched by its sincerity. She had never expected her actions to have such a profound impact on an entire species. For years, humans had been viewed as weak and insignificant by many alien civilizations. But thanks to Emily's victories and the values she represented, attitudes were beginning to shift. Humans were no longer seen as mere bystanders in the galaxy. They were respected as intelligent, resourceful, and resilient. This newfound respect extended beyond public perception. Diplomatic relations between Earth and other planets improved significantly. Trade agreements flourished, cultural exchanges became commonplace, and collaborative projects aimed at solving universal challenges gained momentum. Leaders credited Emily for bridging gaps that had once seemed insurmountable, while she humbly deflected the praise. There was no denying the role she had played in fostering unity. Despite her achievements, Emily never lost sight of what truly mattered to her. She continued teaching, writing, and mentoring, always striving to make a positive difference in the lives of others. Her days were busy, but she cherished every moment, knowing she was doing work that aligned with her values. On rare occasions, she allowed herself to reflect on her journey. She thought about the early days in the combat vault when no one believed in her. She remembered the skepticism, the laughter, the outright dismissal, and yet none of it had stopped her. She had stayed true to herself, trusting her instincts and refusing to give up. Looking back, she realized that her greatest triumph hadn't been defeating Kragoth. It had been proving to herself that she was capable of greatness. Late one evening, as she sat on her porch watching the stars, Emily felt a deep sense of peace. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but she knew she had made a difference. Whether through her classes, her teachings, or simply her example, she had inspired countless others to believe in themselves and their potential. And that, more than anything, was worth celebrating. For Emily, the greatest reward wasn't the trophies or accolades. It was knowing that her legacy would endure long after she was gone. She had shown the galaxy that even the smallest among us can achieve greatness if we're willing to work hard and stay true to ourselves. And in doing so, she had sparked a movement, a ripple effect of courage, determination, and hope that would continue to spread across the stars for generations to come. Years had passed since Emily Carter's legendary victory in the combat vault, but her story continued to inspire people across the galaxy. What started as a single act of courage and skill had grown into a movement that transcended borders, species, and cultures. The phrase, "the human girl who defeated Kragoth in 9 seconds," became more than just a catchy headline. It became a symbol of hope, determination, and the power of the underdog. And though Emily never sought fame or recognition, she found joy in knowing that her actions had sparked something far greater than herself. One of the most remarkable changes was how humanity itself was perceived. Before Emily's rise to prominence, humans were often dismissed as weak or insignificant by many alien civilizations. They were seen as newcomers to the interstellar stage, lacking the physical strength of some species or the advanced technology of others. But Emily's performance in the combat vault, and the principles she embodied, forced others to reconsider their assumptions. Her victories weren't based on raw power or superior weaponry. They were rooted in intelligence, adaptability, and heart. These qualities resonated deeply with countless beings, proving that strength wasn't always about what you could physically do, but how you approached challenges. This shift in perception opened doors for humanity in ways no one could have predicted. Trade agreements between Earth and other planets flourished, as aliens began valuing human ingenuity and creativity. Collaborative projects aimed at solving universal problems, like climate restoration, energy sustainability, and medical advancements, gained momentum. Humans were invited to participate in these efforts not because they were powerful or intimidating, but because they brought fresh perspectives and innovative solutions. For the first time, Earth was seen as an equal partner rather than a minor player in the galactic community. Back home, Emily remained focused on her work. She continued teaching self-defense classes, mentoring students, and sharing her insights through lectures and workshops. Her methods evolved over time, incorporating feedback from those she taught and adapting to new challenges. Yet the core of her philosophy stayed the same: observation, strategy, and mental toughness. These principles weren't just useful in combat, they applied to life itself. Whether someone was facing a bully at school, navigating workplace conflicts, or dealing with personal struggles, Emily's teachings offered practical tools for overcoming obstacles. Her influence extended beyond individuals to entire communities. Schools began integrating her strategies into their curricula, encouraging students to think critically and solve problems creatively. Military organizations adopted her techniques for training soldiers, emphasizing situational awareness and adaptability. Even businesses used her ideas to improve teamwork and decision-making. In every corner of society, people found value in what Emily had to offer. Despite her widespread impact, Emily avoided the trappings of celebrity. She lived modestly, choosing simplicity over luxury. Her apartment remained small and unassuming, filled with books, journals, and mementos from her travels. She spent her free time gardening, meditating, or reading quietly by the window. To her, happiness came from meaningful connections and purposeful work, not material wealth or public adoration. This humility only deepened people's admiration for her, reinforcing the idea that true greatness lies not in outward appearances but in inner character. As the years went by, Emily noticed subtle signs that her legacy would endure long after she was gone. Young children played games inspired by her story, pretending to outsmart imaginary predators in make-believe arenas. Teachers used her example to motivate struggling students, reminding them that perseverance and clever thinking could overcome even the toughest challenges. Artists created paintings, sculptures, and songs dedicated to her achievements, capturing the spirit of resilience she represented. Even historians began documenting her life, ensuring future generations would remember her contributions. One day, while visiting a local library, Emily stumbled upon a book written about her, titled 9 Seconds That Changed the Galaxy. It chronicled her journey from obscurity to legend. Flipping through its pages, she saw photographs of herself, quotes from interviews and analyses of her fighting techniques. The author described her as a pioneer who had redefined what it meant to be strong. Emily chuckled softly at the grandiose language, shaking her head in disbelief. She had never thought of herself as extraordinary, just someone trying to do her best. When asked about her feelings regarding her legacy, Emily responded with characteristic humility. "I'm just glad I could help," she said during a rare interview. "If my story inspires even one person to believe in themselves or try harder, then it's worth it. But none of this is about me. It's about what we can all achieve when we put our minds to it." Her words resonated deeply with audiences, reinforcing the message that greatness isn't reserved for a select few. Anyone, regardless of background or circumstances, could rise above adversity if they were willing to learn, adapt, and persevere. This belief became the foundation of a global and eventually intergalactic movement known as the 9 Seconds Initiative. Its mission was simple: empower individuals to unlock their potential through education, mentorship, and collaboration. The initiative quickly gained traction, attracting supporters from all walks of life. Schools partnered with local organizations to provide resources for underserved communities. Scientists worked together to tackle pressing issues like food shortages and environmental degradation. Artists collaborated across cultures to create works celebrating diversity and unity. At the heart of it all was Emily's philosophy that strength comes not from domination but from understanding, cooperation, and shared purpose. Even as her influence spread, Emily never lost sight of her roots. She returned frequently to the community center where she had first started teaching, ensuring that her original students continued to thrive. Many of them had gone on to become instructors themselves, passing down her methods to new generations. Alex, the once shy teenager who doubted his abilities, now led his own class with confidence and passion. Seeing him teach reminded Emily of why she had embarked on this journey in the first place, to show people that they were capable of more than they realized. On special occasions, former students and colleagues gathered to honor Emily's contributions. They shared stories of how her guidance had changed their lives, expressing gratitude for her unwavering support and wisdom. Though Emily appreciated these gestures, she always redirected the focus back to her students. "It's not about me," she would say. "It's about what you've done with what you've learned. You're the ones making a difference." As she grew older, Emily slowed down slightly, allowing herself more time for reflection. She spent hours gazing at the stars, marveling at how far humanity and the galaxy had come since her days in the combat vault. She thought about the countless lives touched by her story and felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Her journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worthwhile. Eventually, Emily decided to step back from public life, leaving her teachings in the hands of those she had mentored. She moved to a quiet countryside home, surrounded by nature and tranquility. There she wrote down her thoughts and experiences, compiling them into a memoir titled Lessons from the Arena. The book became an instant classic, offering readers insight into her mindset and strategies. It ended with a simple yet powerful message. Strength isn't given, it's earned, and it starts with believing in yourself. Emily passed away peacefully at the age of 87, leaving behind a legacy that spanned galaxies. Tributes poured in from every corner of the universe, celebrating her life and achievements. Statues were erected in her honor, schools were named after her, and festivals were held annually to commemorate her victory in the combat vault. Yet perhaps the greatest testament to her impact was the way people lived their lives, with courage, determination, and a commitment to helping others. Long after her death, Emily's story continued to inspire. Parents told their children about the brave human girl who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Students studied her methods, applying them to everything from sports to science. Leaders invoked her name when addressing challenges, reminding their followers that intelligence and perseverance could overcome any obstacle. And in taverns, classrooms, and training grounds across the stars, tales of the human girl who defeated Kragoth in 9 seconds were told with reverence and awe. For Emily Carter, the ultimate reward wasn't fame or accolades. It was knowing that she had made a difference. Through her actions and teachings, she had shown the galaxy that greatness isn't defined by size, strength, or status. It's defined by heart, determination, and the willingness to think differently. And in doing so, she had sparked a movement that would continue to shape the universe for generations to come.